Thank you very much for being here. So my name is Imran Gohar. I'm a principal solution consultant here at AppZen. I'm based out of the London office, so it was great when I landed on Tuesday. It was raining like cats and dogs, so it reminded me that I brought the weather with me from London. But I think beautiful city, Chicago, so yesterday made up for all the rain that I saw the day before. So I think the topic that I'm going to touch on today is an interesting area, which is really, really getting a lot of attention in Europe, but we do see its application literally across the world now, and that's e-invoicing. So if I were to ask the question, and I think this slide, I'm just going to skip to this one, that when we talk about compliance and e-invoicing, what comes to mind? So maybe someone could just tell me that what comes to your mind when you hear these two terms together? Anyone would? FAPIAs, yeah, that's one good. Approvals, auditors, SaaS compliance. Anything else? No, okay. So I think you said FAPIAs first, so I'll give you this. So I think both of the terms are related. So e-invoicing is a component of compliance. And that's what we see, that compliance mandates are being enforced across countries globally. And e-invoicing is one of the things that a lot of the tax authorities and governments are requiring companies to comply with. So compliance is a much bigger exercise for a lot of companies compared to just e-invoicing, because e-invoicing is just a reception mechanism or integration mechanism. But then there's a lot of stuff that happens with that invoice once it comes into the system based on that country's requirements and tax elements. So if we look around the world, the current, state of play, the Latin American countries are leaders when it comes to e-invoicing. And then you look at the European region, and you find that Nordic countries, Norway, Finland, etc., they seem to lead in adopting e-invoicing. And I think this has been pretty much the trend for a very long time. But now what we are seeing is that this is changing. And this is changing very, very rapidly. And I'll just show you another graphics after this that sort of explains why that is the case. So e-invoicing as part of a compliance exercise is becoming more and more important for a lot of companies, especially after COVID. And there are reasons for that. So if I look at this chart, you will see that in 2024, these were some of the countries that went live with e-invoicing or they enforced e-invoicing mandates on businesses. And in 2025, we anticipate that further big chunk of countries are going to go. And if you look at the list, you'll find that you have majority of them European countries. You have some of the Asia-Pac countries as well as part of that. But going forward, if you look at 2027, 2030, the European Union is going to basically mandate all 27 member states to have e-invoicing in place, meaning that they will want to track, or the tax authorities would want to track every invoice transaction, and it goes much bigger than just invoicing. It's also procurement, other elements as well. So they want to have visibility to all of those transactions, which is very interesting because it's triggered, as we find, because we, as a global solution, we operate in Europe. A lot of companies are coming to us and saying, AppZen, can you help us sort of deploy these mandates? Because they vary country by country. There's no standardization. The formats vary in which e-invoices come in. So there's all this complexity that's really playing havoc. Now, just one example is Germany. Germany, they're going to go live with e-invoicing in January 2025. So we were doing a POC with a big German bank, and they were like, oh, we have got just a quarter left before we'll have to comply with this. So they came to us and they said, can AppZen do something to help us do that? And we said, well, let us look into that. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. What is AppZen? What is this e-invoicing solution that we have developed and we want to deliver to our customers that makes this process very, very seamless for our customers? So hopefully that will come across. Now, coming back to e-invoicing, the two drivers that we found is a lot of the tax authorities have realized that they can avoid a lot of, or minimize a lot of the tax evasion that happens within. So if you look at Italy, the southern European countries, they're adopting e-invoicing a lot quicker than the northern European countries. And that's because they realized, the southern tax authorities, that the tax gap of how much tax they were expecting and how much they actually got was very big. So if you look at Italy, if you look at Spain, Portugal, they have deployed e-invoicing mandates a lot quicker than northern countries. But northern European countries like Germany, France, now they're following suit. Because they have now realized that there is a lot of money that they're missing out that they can get hold of. The second, I think, aspect is optimizing your processes. Now, after COVID, majority of the companies, they digitized their processes. And they realized that there's a lot of efficiency that's to be gained from that. So now, a lot of companies are looking at e-invoicing as the next step in that digitization or transformation journey. And that's why a lot of companies that you see in the US, especially, I know in the US, I was trying to figure out what the US government was doing around this. And I realized that they have been running pilots around e-invoicing. I do not think they will go as far as in mandating it for every business, or they will have a tax portal or something that you have to register invoices to. But they are encouraging a lot of the businesses here in the US that if you're dealing with the government, then you actually send an e-invoice to the government if you're dealing with that. So it's one of the elements of e-invoicing that they are looking at. But then coming again, I think optimization is another key driver for e-invoicing adoption. So another thing to be aware of, that the different e-invoicing mandates that are coming in, there are 3 different mechanisms that the governments or the tax authorities are asking companies to comply with. So the 2 on the left side are what we call a continuous transaction control. So you might have heard of the term CTC. So what that simply means is that any supplier that is sending an invoice to a customer or buyer, they have to register that invoice with the tax authority system. So now the tax authority system is a middleman in that flow. And they want to see every invoice flowing to the buyers and the consumers, and they want to be able to track the tax on it. So that is where you will see, first of all, in Italy, in Romania, in France, the first CTC model, which is what we call the V model, or V flow, where the supplier has to register or certify the invoice before it goes to the customer, and then they pay that invoice. In India, we see the Y flow model, which is basically where the supplier is submitting that invoice to a service provider, and that service provider is then connected to the tax authority system. And in that case, the tax authority system generates a QR code on the invoice that then has to be validated by the customer. Now, a third one that you see is where, like for Germany, as an example, you basically, the supplier is going to generate an e-invoice, and then they're going to attach it to an email and send it off to the customer. So that's creating a lot of challenges, because now you actually are going to receive emails with invoices attached to them, which are in XML or other formats. So how do you get those invoices into your systems, and then how do you go about processing them? So that is what Germany in phase 1 is requiring a lot of their companies to do, is the ability to receive these e-invoices from suppliers. Then there are phases 2 and 3 going on, and I'll touch on those as well. So what are we doing in that context? So what we looked at was, yes, we looked at the e-invoicing piece, and we said, okay, we can do the integration aspect, but we want to do more than just integrate to and because we had this capability of punching out of AppZen into external systems and then pull data from those systems. We had that for expense audit, we had that a lot of for other capabilities as well. So we thought that is the easy piece. So what if we made life even more easier for our customers, that they don't even need to worry about all the complexities per country that one has to consider when they're going on an e-invoicing journey. So what I would like you to do is just imagine that you are expanding your business in Germany, for example, and you have a business unit that's spun up, and that has to comply with the German mandate around e-invoicing. So now for you to set up the e-invoicing setup, you will have to go and find a service provider that's able to pull the e-invoices from the PEPPOL network and all of those other integration points. You'll have to figure out which fields on that invoice do I need to check from a mandatory perspective, because in Germany, there are certain fields that have to be provided by the supplier if it's a German supplier invoicing a German entity. Thirdly, the tax handling. So on that invoice, being able to identify, okay, what is the right tax rates, and then validating those tax rates against, let's say, one of the partners that checks tax or validates that it's the right tax for goods and services. Thirdly, you need to store those e-invoicing documents for 10 years minimum. So being able to store those documents and to be able to produce those original e-invoices you received from the supplier to your tax authorities or auditors. And lastly, the ability to report. So there is an e-reporting concept. I won't go into a lot of detail on that, but the ability to have visibility into, okay, which supplier is sending you e-invoices that is failing. You could say compliance checks, which supplier is sending you what volume of e-invoices. So a lot of this visibility doesn't exist straight away. So what we decided to do was build this concept of country packs. So what these country packs will allow you to do is flip a switch, and the AppZen system will automatically start configuring these 5 components. So it's going to automatically set up the integrations for that particular country. So it will. So if it's, for example, Germany, and they need to basically import e-invoices coming via email, then the system will automatically start receiving those different formats and then start parsing them, processing them. If it's Romania, where you have to connect into a tax authority system, it's going to activate those connections. So AppZen is going to have our own PEPPOL access point. So PEPPOL is the Pan-European Public Procurement Online Network, which is a secure way of transmitting e-invoices across the European Union. So we will have our own access point, and we'll get, in this case, where we are registered with the European Union to basically receive invoices from the e-invoices from that network. And then once we have the e-invoices coming in, we will start processing them like a normal invoice. But then at the same time, when you activate the country pack, the system will automatically configure things. It will configure the right skins for Germany, meaning it will have all the fields which are mandatory to be extracted, to be captured automatically. It's going to configure tax. It's going to automatically seed all of the tax rates for Germany. It's going to automatically also set up any validation checks that need to happen. So for example, in Germany, if a supplier sends you an invoice and they are charging you VAT, which is the value-added tax, then you have to check that they have provided their VAT registration ID number or the TIN number, this tax identification number on their invoice. So the ability to do those checks automatically. So basically we'll deploy DIY recipes pre-created that do those validation checks for you for Germany invoices. And then we will also give you dashboards that allow you to have all the analytics and data visibility around the e-invoicing. And I'll show a few examples around that as well. And lastly, obviously, we will store the original XML. So if you need AppZen to be your system of record when it comes to storing, archiving your e-invoices, we will do that. But if you need to take those documents and push them into a local document management system for local storage, then we will also be able to do that. So that the original invoice is available to you for your auditors to check. Any questions so far? All right, so in addition to that, we will support from an AppZen perspective all of those 3 different mechanisms by which e-invoices are being received and make sure that these are integrated and are able to receive e-invoices efficiently from those particular tax authority systems. Now, if you look at the number of tax authority systems, literally every country has their own. So if you just imagine you going live, so Romania and Italy are already live. Germany, and so France is going to go down the CTC route. Then there are other countries like Belgium, Spain that are also going to go down that route. So having these country packs where you just flip a switch and we are able to talk to their tax authority system and pull the data from that is going to really, really save you time, effort, and obviously introduce efficiencies around that. All right, so I think I've given a few examples, so I'm just going to skip through some of these slides quickly, but it's just highlighting one example specifically to Germany, where in phase 1, in January 2025, German companies are required to, for example, receive e-invoices. Then they will mandate it that every supplier has to issue all invoices as e-invoices, so paper, PDFs, all of that will go away. So that's the reality that's coming, and we recognize this because we operate in Europe. And we recognize that if we don't have this ability, we will not be able to serve our customers in that region, because every invoice will be an e-invoice very soon. And then you can see in January 2028, so they have taken a phased approach on this. All invoices, business to business, will be e-invoicing in Germany. So this is some of the requirements in Germany. So they have these two specific e-invoicing formats. One is what they call X-Rechnung. Other is ZUGFeRD. So the difference between the two is X-Rechnung is an XML file. So it's pure XML. They attach it to an email and they send it to you. Now it's your problem to get it into your system and parse it and do all of that. ZUGFeRD version is basically a PDF with an XML attached to it. So it's a different type of document that comes in. So you have to process the PDF, but then you have to also process the XML because it has data in it. So this sort of gives you an idea that it can be transmitted over the PEPPOL network. It can be transmitted via EDI communication or via email. And then currently it's a direct interchange, meaning there is no clearance model. So the CTC is a clearance model where a tax authority system sits in between. And then it's currently for domestic transactions and also 10 plus years of storage and archiving is required as part of that. So that's an example. So let me now jump into the system and sort of show you how this process will work. Okay, so let me just give you a quick demo of how this whole thing will work in AppZen once you start using it. So first of all, once you have, so first thing is you'll have to obviously enable the entities that you are interested in. So in this case, what will happen is that let's say that you already have set up one entity, which is Romania, and you want to go ahead and set up another entity, which is Germany in AppZen. So you will click the Create button, and that will take you into this form. Now, this is some of the data that we would need to actually set up that particular country or a country pack or that entity. So you simply put in the country, the name of the company, the entity name, you could say select your country pack in this case, which is Germany. You enter the tax code, which is the identifier that allows us to then pull the e-invoices from the PEPPOL network and other areas into AppZen. You provide all the details here, so I'm just going to get this quickly. Once you have done that, then the last thing you do is you can tell the system that I want all of the different skins, everything to be auto-generated and created and configured in the system, and then you click the Create button. And what that will do is that it will then automatically add that country into the AppZen e-invoicing configuration. And you can see that it's pending right now, but it takes a little while for it to then make all the connections, set up all the integration sources, and make sure that they are working. So it will change to success once it's completed. Now, once you did that, the system will automatically spin up all of the configurations. So here it will automatically spin up the Germany e-invoicing skin, which basically means that the system is going to configure all of the different fields, both header and line level, that are invoice related. And it's highlighting here which ones are mandatory from an e-invoicing perspective or a German perspective. Similarly for invoice line items, It's going to make sure that all of these, and it will activate this skin for that particular entity. Next, it's also going to seed all of the tax rates that are applicable for Germany. So in Germany, you have 19%, 7%, or 0% tax rate, so it's going to seed those. Now, obviously, in your ERP system, you might have tax codes which might have to be configured here. So that exercise will need to happen for this to be a valid, you could say, tax assignment exercise from a solution perspective. But what it will do is automatically provide you that these are the 4 tax rates that are applicable for Germany. And then last of all, it will go into the integration source, and this is where it's going to create that link automatically to the different tax authority systems or to the different, you could say, mechanisms that you want to receive e-invoices from. So all of this happens as soon as you enable that particular country pack or enable that entity. Next, what will happen in the invoice workbench? So once this is set up, is active, invoices will start flowing into AppZen. So let's assume that it's a XML file coming in. So AppZen will automatically process that XML file. It's not only just going to create a dummy image from that XML, it's going to populate the form with all of the data, and it will keep the original XML as a supporting document because you need all 3 elements to make sense of that data. So in this case, you can see e-invoices coming in, so they will show up as source e-invoice. And once you click on that, if I go back here, this is where you will see the actual invoice image that is created from that XML data. You'll see everything populated on the invoice form here. So you will see all the line and header level items. This is also where you see the DIY validation checks will trigger. They will validate the data. They will trigger all of the compliance business rules and make sure that the invoice is compliant with German requirements. On top of that, on the right-hand side, you will have all of the attachments along this transaction, which will basically have the actual XML file that came in. So if I click here, this is what the XML file looks like. So if you imagine having to do thousands of e-invoices and being able to parse through all of them, and then doing it for different XML standards for different countries, because Nordics have their own XML formats, Northern Europe is going their own way, and Southern Europe has their own. So the complexity just goes tenfold up. So this is where you can start seeing the benefit of having this approach, where we are able to support this in the product without having third-party, partners or vendor people involved, service providers involved. AppZen doing everything by itself. Now, the big question people ask me is, where is the AI bit? What's the link between e-invoicing and AI? Because that's under our bread and butter. So with e-invoicing, one thing that goes away is the extraction piece. Now the data is coming electronically. You don't need to extract anything from any document. So the AI requirement around data extraction using computer vision models is not required anymore because the invoice is created directly in the solution. So a lot of companies, they would challenge me and say, well, why do I need AI anymore then? Because I'm receiving everything electronically now. So I say, well, what happens after you have received it? What happens downstream? Do you still manually match that invoice? Because that e-invoice still has to be matched to a PO. Do you still manually code that invoice to the right GL accounting stream before you send it for approval? And that's when they say, I didn't think of that. That manual step is still there. So that is where AI adds to the efficiency. Because in our case, we take a broader view from an AI perspective. We're not an OCR tool. We're not a data extraction tool only. We do a lot more with AI when it comes to invoice processing. We want to automate the end-to-end process and not just a small portion within that process. That's where efficiencies come, because the AI, in our case, on the autonomous AP side, is able to use AI to do the matching, is able to do the GL coding predictions. It's able to trigger the workflows to the right people for approval. So all of that is still becomes automated with AppZen. So in that context, we believe that the AI element will still be beneficial, even though you might switch to a lot of these e-invoicing mechanisms. All right. I'm going to go quickly to this. I know that I set up one country, which was Germany, in which case you would be receiving e-invoices as email. But then if you have a CTC mechanism where you need to look at, I'm just going to skip this because it's the same thing. I'm just going to jump to this screen. Okay. Yeah, so once you have started receiving e-invoices, what you also want to be able to then track is what are we receiving, what are the different metrics that I need to care about. So here you can see that the system will break down the e-invoicing by country. So you could be operating in Europe, you could be operating in Latin America where e-invoicing is required. And this is where you will be able to see all of the metrics around that. You'll be able to see, okay, if there are compliance failures or compliance issues, then by country, I want that to be broken down. So again, we are looking at it from that perspective that we want to give you visibility and tracking capability as well as part of the solution. So hopefully this sort of gives you an understanding of how we are approaching e-invoicing. I know in the American region or North America, it's not something that is yet mandated, but considering how things are going, eventually, if all of Europe goes into e-invoicing, I think, if you do business with a lot of the European suppliers, there might be a need for e-invoicing in the US as well to be able to send e-invoices in. So that's what we are planning for from a solution perspective, so that when that time comes, you already have that capability in AppZen. And it's like switching a country pack, and you're able to receive and process those e-invoices from those countries. So thank you very much.